Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to look at, we are going to start a new series about PHP fundamentals to help you get into the backend world. Okay, so on this channel, previously we looked at HTML, CSS fundamentals. We went ahead and looked at JavaScript. We did a series on JavaScript and even some projects, and in today's video we are starting a journey about PHP fundamentals, and this is dedicated to some of my students, those who have been asking me to put up these videos so that they can have them as reference. Okay, so we are starting this series where we're going to break down PHP and how you can easily get started with PHP. Okay, so to those ones who don't know me, I'm called Muke John Baptist, and most people call me JB Web Developer. I'm the founder, I'm a self-taught developer and a founder of This is Hub and This is Hub Coding School. You can find more details about those two in the description below. So to take this course, there is nothing much you need to know at this point. The only thing that you should be acquainted with is a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS. If you know any other programming language like JavaScript or Python, that is an added advantage, but it is not a requirement. So basically getting into PHP as easy, so long as you know some little HTML and CSS, we can easily get started with PHP. So to get started, let's first actually break down these two concepts: backend and front end. So these are the most commonly used term in web development. Okay, they are most used when you're just going into web development or getting started with web development. You're going to hear people talking about backend, front end, and you might be asking yourself, actually, what are these terms and what do they mean? So let's start with actually front end, and you're just going to first define them under simple terms. Okay, so in simple terms, front end refers to that part of the website that, or an application that users can see and interact with. Okay, and backend refers to that part of the website that users cannot see, and it is responsible for managing and processing data. Okay, so now at this point you might be saying, JB, what are you saying? What I'm trying to say is, for the front end, okay, so if you are to look at details, what front end contains, what it consists of, a front end development or front end developer, front end consists of visual elements of a website or application such as layout, design, colors, images, buttons, forms, that everything you see on the website that users can see. Okay, so let me take an example. I'm just going to jump in and maybe show you something. So let's say you went to YouTube. Okay, so let's say you went to YouTube. So if we talk about the front end part of this website, all these things you are seeing here, the buttons, these forms, all these logos, images, videos, all these things that are visible, all these things you can see here, these ones is what you call front end. The things that users can interact with, they can look at, the text, the images, and everything you can see. So that is what you call front end. Okay, so that is in simple terms. Front end consists of everything that users will look at or interact with when they are on a particular website. So at this point, I understand that you must now getting into know what actually front end is. Okay, So let's just see, continue one more thing. So front-end developers, they use languages such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript to create and manipulate these visual elements, making sure that they are user-friendly, responsive, and accessible. So that is what I can talk about front end, but really in brief, a front end development, it is that part of the website that users are looking at. Are you looking at the image on the website, the buttons, the colors, and everything you look at? That is front end. And what is back end? So back end is responsible for the server side operations that make a website or application work behind the scenes. Okay, so this includes managing and processing data, communicating with databases, handling user requests. So for instance, if you go to YouTube and you click on subscribe button, now behind the scenes there is that application behind the scenes that is making it work. Like you click on subscribe and then it is subscribed, and then you click on like and then it is liked. And by the way, speaking of subscribing, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please, this is the time you can come and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that we can create more content. So if you come to my YouTube channel, you can see we have a ton of amazing content here. You can just smash that subscribe button so that we can make more content. Thank you so much. Let's just continue understanding what backend means. So as we said, backend is responsible for those operations that happens at the server. Okay, and speaking of which, in this course we are going to spend most of our time actually doing the back end. Okay, so the backend developers use programming languages such as PHP, Python, Java, Ruby to build the logic and functionality of a website. So YouTube is one of the backend websites or applications. So for instance, uploading of videos, subscribing functionality, liking functionality, sharing functionality, all those cool functionalities, they happen because of the backend behind the scenes. Okay, so yeah, so backend is so much powerful and is so helpful in today's web development. So in summary, the front end is what users see and backend is what powers the website behind the scenes. Okay, so let's go into our module 1 of actually getting started with PHP. Okay, so we're going to first understand in the first place what is PHP. So PHP was developed by Rasmus. That second name is always hard for me. Is it Radolf? Something like that. But Rasmus released the first version of PHP in 1994. So this is like our founder who made this amazing programming language. And PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. But when Rasmus actually created it, those days he had created and he had named it as personal home pages. So PHP in full, in early days, it used to be personal home pages, because when Rasmus created his PHP, it was for his personal website that he had built, and that's why he had called it personal home page. But as the language starts developing, they had to redefine what PHP stands for. And another thing to know about PHP, it is a server-side programming language that is primarily used for web development to create dynamic web pages. So we are going to jump in, by the way, to understand what dynamic web pages are in a minute. Okay. Another thing you have to know about PHP is that it can be written alongside HTML in these tags, these script tags here. Often it is used also with a relation database such as MySQL or MySQL. So today PHP is one of the most popular programming language on the web, and we are going to get into those details in a minute. Okay, so at this point, I know if you are starting, if this is your first time actually doing programming or doing a backend language, you must have searched and searched on internet, and you are asking yourself, which one should I learn? There is Node.js, there is Python, there is PHP, there is Ruby, there is Java, and so many other languages that you can find there. There is Golang, and so many that has come on onto into this era of web development, most especially in 2023. Okay, and you would be asking, is it worth it actually to learn PHP? I asked the same question when I was going to learn PHP. Is it really worth it to learn PHP? So I'm just want to take this section of the video to explain to you why actually you should learn PHP. So I want to first start by giving some statistics according to W3 Tech, February 2023. You can see, by the way, this is really up-to-date statistics. 77.8, that is around 78% of the website on the entire web are built using PHP. That is one statistic that should actually convince you that PHP is really worth learning in 2023, because you can imagine 78% of the websites are all powered using PHP. And this makes PHP the most popular server-side language in use on the web today. So this may sound saying like, it seems like everyone has learned PHP, and do I need to learn PHP into the job market? You're going to talk about the job market in just a minute, but knowing the language that most people know actually helps you, more especially if you are just a beginner, because you are going to jump into very many problems, and the fact that there are a lot of people who know, you can easily get help. Just look at it in that angle. You can imagine if you are learning a new language that actually very few people know about. If you get stuck, it is very hard actually to get help online or on any other platforms. So if you're learning a language that most people are aware of, it is good, because it is you have a possibility of getting help from one of these people to solve your particular problem you have, most especially on Stack Overflow. And another thing, there is a reason why all these people are learning this language. Okay. So the second point is PHP is multi-purpose. What do we mean that it is multi-purpose? PHP can be used to build simple websites, such as a landing page. You can use it to use dynamic footers, and we're going to look at that in the future. You can use it to build complex websites, such as e-commerce and portals. You can build really very complex systems, like accounting systems, school management systems. All these portals, CRM portals, you can use PHP. You can use PHP to build REST APIs. Now, at this point, you might not be aware of REST API, but in modern development these days, most companies are actually building APIs to be able to share their data with other people who might need to use them. Okay, so in 2023 right now, data is becoming something very important, and APIs help us actually to share data with other developers or other people who would want to use data that we have collected. And PHP is good at that. Developing REST APIs, it is good at that. We have image, audio processing, and even video processing. You can still use PHP. So, and another good thing is that it works with almost all databases, both relational and non-relational databases. As we are going to see, it is so cool using it with MySQL, SQL, and even NoSQL databases. Another thing, it is on high demand on the job market. And the fact that it is used to build a lot of things, most startups, they prefer using PHP in their tech stack, because they know they can accomplish many things at a low cost. That's why they want developers who know PHP, and which makes actually the whole job market, since there are very many startups than stable companies. That means the job market of PHP will be on high demand. Okay, so another point is easy to learn. Now, this one is you can argue, and many people have argued about it, like PHP is easy to learn or is it hard to learn. My say as a self-taught developer is that if you look at PHP and maybe compare it to Python, if you look at the code, how it is written, I think Python has a more relatively easy syntax than PHP. That is for sure. But then, if you want to look at it in a more realistic way, is if you are to look at starting learning PHP and starting learning Python, to an extent why you develop a full stack application, like why you can learn Python and develop a full stack app, and why you learn PHP and you develop a full stack app, like you develop an entire application. It is very easy to develop an entire app in PHP than in Python. Okay, that's why we say it is easy to learn, to really make actually some sort of a meaningful program. Okay, so the fact that PHP is written alongside or within HTML makes it to have superpowers of it being somehow easy compared to other programming languages like Python. Okay. So another point is about CMS. So right now, the most used content management system, by the way, if you are not aware of a content management system, it is used to create websites that users can manage on their own. So right now, the most used CMS or content management system on the web currently is WordPress. Okay, and WordPress was built on top of PHP. Okay, so right now there are a lot of jobs that WordPress is offering. First of all, WordPress development, whereby developing themes for WordPress and then customizing those themes. That is one big entire job that PHP created. Okay, and then we also have WordPress can also be used as a headless CMS. Now, you might not be knowing what a headless CMS, but just know it can be used as an interface for storing the data, and then you can use another front end to fetch that data. Okay, but knowing WordPress, or WordPress being number one, actually made PHP to be a more relevant language in today's world. Okay, so apart from WordPress, there are some other CMS like Magento, Drupal, and OpenCart. All these are amazing tools, and they have big market share in right now on internet. So that makes learning PHP more relevant, because all these people who are managing these e-commerce, these content management system, you need to be knowing WordPress, you need to be knowing PHP rather, to be able to manage or use these platforms. So which makes actually learning PHP more relevant. So another one is PHP framework. Right now, the most popular framework on the web, comparing Django, Spring Boot, and all others, Laravel is the most popular framework right now on the entire web. And Laravel is a PHP framework. Okay, and this is very extremely powerful and full-featured web framework for creating applications and APIs. So knowing PHP, or there is no way you can use Laravel if you actually don't know how to use PHP. So PHP, Laravel is built on top of PHP. And I think one of the things that forced me actually to learn, leave alone other things, was actually to be able to use Laravel. If you can look at the time taken to develop an application when you're using Laravel, you look on how amazing PHP is. It takes shortest amount of time to develop an application, a full stack application using Laravel. Authentication is covered. Most of the things that give hard time when learning backend, they are all sorted. Okay, so I think it is really worth actually learning PHP in 2023, and so that you can actually be able to develop applications. Okay, so we have talked about good things about PHP, but there are some things PHP is not suitable for. So if you want to build real-time applications, PHP might not be a suitable tool, though it can build a real-time app. Okay, using WebSockets, you can try to configure it around, but really, if you are going to build a real-time application, you would consider using something like Node.js. Okay, if you are going to do an application that involves artificial intelligence and machine learning, instead of using PHP, you would consider something like Python. Okay, so I wanted to put this part so that you actually know that it is just not like everything PHP can do it. There are some things it is just limited to for now. Okay, so we have talked so much here. Let's just start looking, actually getting closer to writing our first application in PHP. So the first thing is actually understanding how does a PHP script look like, or how does a PHP code look like at this point. Okay, so a PHP script starts with that tag, though it is the less than question mark PHP and ends with question mark greater than, and all the code that writes this one is all the code we write it between those two tags. Okay, take these two tags as, I don't know if you are familiar with JavaScript, but in JavaScript we normally write something like this, or HTML. Let me just try to demonstrate for a second. Let me say in JavaScript, those ones who are familiar with JavaScript, so we normally write a script tag like this. So you have like script. Okay, so you write something like this. Something like this, and then all the PHP the JavaScript code will be here. You get? So for PHP, in the similar way, PHP, it is also just like that. So in PHP we write something like this. So you write PHP, and then down here is where you put the closing tag. Okay, so and then we write all our code here. So the PHP code will be here. Yeah, so that is really the syntax of that is the syntax of PHP. Everything is written within these quotes. So take it the way we see, like for HTML. So you remember, for HTML we have to write something like HTML. You have to write everything inside an HTML tag. Okay, so you can see for HTML we'll use something like this. So for JavaScript we use something like this. So for PHP we actually write all the code inside here. Okay, so great. So an example is here. So you have, for instance, a core word, a core hello world. We are going to get into this in a minute. but this is how the syntax or how the code for PHP looks like. Okay, so before we get into actually writing the actual code, let's first understand how does PHP work behind the scenes, or how does the backend language actually work. Because if you understand how PHP works, you'll be very close to understanding how actually a backend language works. Okay, and before we go into understanding how the PHP work, let's actually first see how does a basic HTML page, for instance, work behind the scenes. If you had a front-end application or you had a website that is built in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, how would it work or how would it behave online? Okay, so the understanding of this one is that it starts with a user going in. It starts with a user going in the browser. So a user goes to a browser, and then you make a request. Maybe you are requesting for a website like thisishub.com. Okay, so you are requesting for a particular website in the browser. So a browser will trigger a request. It will send a request to a server that is located here, as you can see. And by the way, a server is any machine, or it is just that computer where your files or where your website is seated online. Okay, so a browser will send a request to the server, and then the server will then return the HTML page that is stored there back to the browser. And you can see it is as simple as those two processes. You only have the browser sending a request to the server, and the server is just going to get the files or that HTML page the way it was stored on it, and it will send it back to the browser, and then the browser is going to render it and you can see. And this concept is what we call a static website, because this very process, the website will be the same exactly the way every time you request it. Whether you request it 10 times or 20 times in that very day, the website will look exactly the same. Okay, so that means that concept, as we have seen, is called a static website. So when you're going to hear people using that term, static website and dynamic website. So a static website, it is that website where when you request it from the server, it will be sent the way it was put by the developer or by the user. Okay, so let's now, since we have understood the basic working of an HTML website, let's now compare it with a basic working of actually a PHP website. So a PHP website, take an example, for instance, of Facebook, or take an example of Instagram, YouTube, all those applications whereby the content is changing very fast. Okay, and if you want to know how a website is a backend website, if you just go on that website and every second or every minute content is changing or data is changing on that interface, just know they are using a backend language behind the scenes. Okay, so how does this work? So actually the starting process is the same. So a user goes in the browser and he requests to access a certain website. Let's say youtube.com. Okay, so the browser will send a request to the server, and then the server will notice that actually that this request is requiring some sort of data, or it is having a PHP extension on it. For instance, you are going to see that all websites that run on PHP, they end with a .php extension instead of .html. So it can look at that this page that they are requesting has a .php extension on it. And that means that actually it may think it tells the server that there is a possibility that there is some dynamic data here that is required. So now, instead of the server returning back the HTML page, what it does, it sends this request to an interpreter. Okay, so in this case, this interpreter is a PHP interpreter that actually looks at understands the request and sees what this page requires. So if it requires, for instance, data, it will go into it will send now that request back to the database to fetch the data or the file system, and then when it gets the data, puts it together and sends back the response with the HTML page to the server, where the server now gets this page and returns it to the browser. Okay, so you can see now here the process, actually the steps increase. We have the browser sending a request to the server. The server sees the request and then sends that request to the PHP interpreter. The PHP interpreter looks at what the request wants, and if it requires some data, then it will send or try to fetch the data from the database, combine back the data. For instance, you might request YouTube for the top or popular music. So when you search for popular music, that request is going to be sent to the database, to the server. The server will send to the interpreter, and the interpreter will look that you need some sort of popular songs. So it will go to the database to fetch the popular songs, get the songs, combine it back into HTML, and then sends it back to the server. Then the server will render it into the browser. Okay, and that kind of process is what we call a dynamic website. So dynamic website, the pages are ever changing every time according to the user's request. Okay, so let me hope after on this I've tried to break down some concepts. If you have not understood, there is another video here on this channel. You can check it on the concept which says how web works. Just go to my YouTube channel. There is another video that explains more details about this concept. Okay, so but for now, let's see actually how we can set up a PHP environment. So before we write code, we have to figure out, or we have to have a number of things for us to be able to start writing some PHP code. Okay, so how do we set up this environment? As we said, PHP is a backend language, so it has some different setup than the one you are familiar with in HTML, CSS. So in HTML, most times you only need a browser and a code editor. Maybe you are familiar with VS Code, so you might be having VS Code and then you're having a browser, and then you write your code in the VS Code and then you see your website in the browser. But one thing, as we have seen, PHP is a server-side language. That means that browsers do not understand PHP. That one, I want to repeat it at this point. Browsers do not understand PHP. So what happens is that it has to be interpreted. The browsers have there must be a PHP interpreter to interpret the PHP code to the browsers. Okay, and that's why we need some sort of a different setup or a different environment for us to be able to write PHP programs. So let's just jump in and see how we can start setting up. So PHP more especially is actually known to be using a LAMP stack. Now, if it is your first time to hear what a LAMP stack is, this is what you use in programming. You are going to hear people talking about tech stack. So people will just say, you built a good program. Which tech stack do you use? So if someone is talking about a tech stack, they are trying to say, what set of tools did you use to build this program? Maybe you built a website or you built a software, and then if someone asks you what tech stack did you use, what he's trying to say is, what is a group of tools that you used to build this program? So PHP is related with what you call a LAMP stack. Now, a LAMP stack is a group of tools that together help us build PHP softwares. Okay, that is just in brief. So LAMP stack is containing or is consists of 4 tools. The first one is Linux. So Linux is an operating system, and this one is mostly used on online servers or online operating system. If you buy a cPanel, or if you are just going to deploy your project online, those servers normally use an operating system of Linux. Okay, that is where actually it was got. But on the local machine right now, we are going to be using Windows. Even online you can use Windows, but it's rare. Most of the times they use Linux operating system. But here we are going to use, in our local setup, we'll use Windows, as I'm just going to explain in a minute. So another tool in that LAMP stack is Apache, and Apache is a web server software. So as we are saying, if you remember, in the working of a PHP website, there is a server. So Apache works as a server, and then another one is MySQL, which works as a database, and then P is actually for PHP, the language itself where we write the code. Okay, and on the side here I put a note that Linux is the operating system most cPanels use, but on the local machine we can use Windows. Okay, now you can see all these set of tools. It can be something to worry about, because downloading all those tools to put them together can be hard. But thanks to some people, some developers have thought about that one, and they solved the problem. So there are some softwares or tools that actually can give everything we need in one package. Okay, and one of it is these tools such as XAMPP, MAMP, or WAMP. Okay, so in this series we are going to be using XAMPP. Okay, we are going to be using XAMPP, and really, if you install one of these tools, or if you don't have one of these tools installed, you don't have to worry. But what XAMPP does, it gives us all these tools for us to use. You only need to install XAMPP, and you don't have to worry about installing MySQL, Apache, and other things. It will install for us all the necessary tools we need to start developing a PHP website. So having said that, we will need to install or to download XAMPP, but we are going to get into that in a second. For now, let's first understand what XAMPP is. If you look at XAMPP in full, XAMPP is X is for cross-platform, and then A is for Apache server, M is for MariaDB, P is for PHP, and another P is for Perl programming language. So MariaDB is a database, Apache is a server, as you can see, Perl is the PHP is the programming language you're going to use, and Perl actually is also another programming language altogether. So XAMPP is an open source application that was developed by Apache friends, and it is the easiest way how we can have this whole PHP setup done on our computers with ease. Okay, so in order to get the PHP working, we will have to install XAMPP, so that it can give us the Apache server and MySQL. In fact, the most important thing we need from XAMPP is, we are going to see when we are even installing it, the most important thing we need from XAMPP, there are 3 things. The first one is the PHP language, or the PHP itself. So it will install for us PHP. The second one, it will install for us MySQL database. The third one, it is going to install for us the Apache server. And of course, the database comes with phpMyAdmin and MySQL. Okay, so now let's talk about installing these tools. So at this point, I know you are familiar with a coding editor. You might be using there are some people who are familiar with Sublime Text. If you are using Sublime Text, or you are using Atom, or you are using what? maybe you're using PHP Storm or any other code editor apart from VS Code, you can go ahead and use that one. But in this course or in this series, I'm going to be using VS Code. Okay, and I think in 2023, most developers, professional developers, they use VS Code, and you can also use it. So if you want to install VS Code, just head to, I'm just going to go on internet right now. Simply head to your browser, okay, and in the browser you can just simply type in VS Code download. Okay, just simply type in that, and on this first link here, you can see here the first link, you will see that you can download VS Code from code.visualstudiocode.com. So just click on this first link. Okay, just click on this first link. It will take you to this page. It will take you to this page where you can download VS Code for your particular operating system. If you're using Windows like I'm doing, just install this, download this one for Windows. If you're using Linux, you can download this one, and if you're using Mac, you can also install it there. Okay, so just download, and it is not hard to install. It is easy, just like other softwares. Click download it, and then you can install this one. Then another one you can do is sorry for that. So another one, you can just go and search for XAMPP. So type in XAMPP download. Okay, just type in the browser XAMPP download, and download XAMPP from Apache Friends. This first link here, just simply click on download, and then they will take you here where you also download for your operating system. So you can see there is XAMPP for Windows, XAMPP for Linux, and then there is XAMPP for iOS. Okay, so if you're using Mac, this is the place where you download from. Otherwise, just choose for your operating system and download one of them. Okay, so when you finish downloading, at this point you should be having in your downloads, you should have your VS Code and XAMPP. So install VS Code. It is not easy, but I'm just going to take you through the installation for XAMPP, because for it is somehow tricky, and I would want to guide you on how to install it. So if you already have XAMPP, if you're having XAMPP installed, you can just skip, or you can even just continue and see the whole setup, so that you can see if there is something you can add. Okay, so now double click. So the first thing is select XAMPP. So let me try to actually zoom in here. So just double click on XAMPP. Okay, when you double click on it, it will bring this note. It might or might not bring this note. Let me zoom in this note. It might bring this note which says important because an activated user blah blah on your system, some functions of that are possibly restricted. When it brings this pop-up, simply click OK. Okay, just simply click OK and move on. Now next, it will bring this screen. Okay, just click next, and then this is the most important part here. Now it will bring this next screen which says select the components. Now by default, it will select a lot. It will more especially, it is going to select all of them. You see, we are installing three things. We are installing the server, the program language, and the program languages. So you have program languages, and there are two of them here. The first one, just uncheck and only leave Apache and MySQL. For the server, we need only these two things. We need Apache and MySQL. So uncheck, just uncheck FileZilla, Mercury, and Tomcat. Just uncheck these three under server, and then under program languages, just only check PHP. We don't need PAR, just only install PHP. And then under here, just only check PHP myadmin, just only that. So if you are done with that, just simply click next. Okay, so when you click next, you just it will bring you where to install. Let me show you. So it will just bring you what to install in local disk C XAMPP. Just click next, then click next, and then it will start the installation. And then after that, it will just bring you this screen. Okay, it will just say completing the XAMPP setup, and just click on finish. Now when you click on finish, it's going to bring you where to save these languages. Okay, just click on US or whichever, I don't know, but just click on US, the one which is selected, and then click on save. Okay, click on save and then click on finish. Now at that point, it is going to open this panel. Okay, it's going to open this, we normally call this XAMPP control panel. So it's going to open this XAMPP control panel. Okay, and you can see it shows us the services. It shows us the services we have installed, AppK, MySQL, and others. And then under AppK and the MySQL, it will have on actions asking you to start these services. Okay, so before you start these services, now when you start your services from here, every time you are going to run a PHP application, or you are going to write a program in PHP, you have to start these applications. So to avoid the hassle of starting the applications, these services, every time you are going to create a PHP website or a PHP application, we are going to set it up that every time you start your machine or your machine is on, these two services are actually already started. You simply write your program. Okay, so at this point, if you go to your local disk C, you should be able to see a XAMPP folder. Let me just go and navigate there. So go to your PC and simply navigate to local disk C. Okay, simply click on local disk C. Okay, if you see here, let me try to get my glass. Okay, let me try to get my glass here so that you can see is already running. Okay, so let me see F11. Okay, so if you see here, you see that there is inside your local disk C, you will notice there is somewhere that shows XAMPP. Okay, simply double click on this to open it. Okay, just double click to open it. And when you open it and you scroll down, so I want to scroll down here, you are going to notice somewhere down at the end. So inside XAMPP, okay, you can see inside the XAMPP, we are in the XAMPP folder. Okay, inside the XAMPP, we have this file called XAMPP control. So let me click on it. You see there are very many files here. There is this XAMPP start, XAMPP stop. There is this one which says XAMPP control.exe. Now for some reason you might not see .exe, but so long as you can see XAMPP control, okay, what you do, simply right click on this application. Just simply right click on it. Simply right click and then run it as an administrator. Okay, right click on it and run it as an administrator. Okay, so I have already run this function, but just simply run as an administrator. Now when you run it as an administrator, then you should see something like this. Okay, so you run it as an administrator, you will see a pop-up again. So you will see a pop-up from this control panel again. But this time it will be showing some X on the service. If you look here on the X panel here, there is some 2X on the left side of upper key and then the left side of my SQL. Okay, so just click on this X, just click on that X, and it will bring you a pop-up asking you to install. Okay, so click on install, and then that one will be done. Then click again on the X for MySQL, and then you also click install. And then now at this point, what is left is to start the services. So you can just go here. So you can see, let me just try to show you guys before we leave this. So after you have clicked on this X and you have installed, it is going to disappear. These X are going to disappear. Okay, now the only thing that you're remaining with is just click on these actions. So under actions, click on start, and then even for MySQL, click on start, and this one will start our services. And every time we put on our computer, these two services, they will be running, so that we don't have actually to configure them every time we are going to run our PHP programs. Okay, good. So if you have done that, that is great. Now at this point in time, you can just go to your browser and type in localhost. Okay, so to test that PHP has been installed, go to the browser and type in localhost. Just simply type in localhost, as simple as that. Now for my case, it is bringing this. Now for your case, it is not bringing that. What it is bringing is possibly something like this. Let me show you. I'm not sure if I still have I don't think I have it. Okay, but on your machine, what it is bringing is to bring something to do with a dashboard. Okay, it is bringing here on top localhost stroke dashboard. Okay, so where are these folders, or where are all these things, where are they originating? Okay, where are these originating? So let's talk about this localhost thing. What is localhost? So localhost, it is where actually our server is located. Okay, so just go back into local disk C and then open XAMPP. Now when you open XAMPP, let me get my this thing here to help us see. Now in local disks, under XAMPP, there is one folder that is very important, and that folder is called htdocs. Okay, so if you check inside XAMPP, there is this folder called htdocs, and to know that it is very important, in fact, just click on it and first send it as a shortcut. Just go and do this. Right click, go to send. Okay, then send it to desktop to create a shortcut on the desktop. So when I go back to my desktop, let me just go back to my desktop here. So if I go back to the desktop, a minute. If I go back to the desktop here, let me show you on my desktop. So on my desktop, I have this htdocs shortcut. So if you have sent it to the desktop, you should be looking at this folder at this point. You should have this shortcut on your desktop. If you double click on it, it is going to open htdocs. So if you look at the URL here, let me just show you something. If you look in the URL, right now we are located inside htdocs folder. So you can see XAMPP htdocs. We are inside htdocs, And now for you, you will not have these folders I have. Okay, you will not have these folders I have. You get, you will not have these folders I have. You will be having a bunch of folders, a bunch of files inside there, and one of them is dashboard. So you are going to see somewhere you will have a folder called dashboard, and then with some other many files. Okay, so what you do is you will have so many files. Simply copy all those files. What you do is, let's do this. So in your htdocs, the first thing is we are going to create some just right click in this one. So let's first create these two things. The first one, create a folder and create it as maybe temp. You just say put temp. Okay, or original, you can just say original. So original, you can just put all those folders. So do Control A to select all the folders that you have there. Okay, and then of course deselect this original and just carry everything in that folder and drag it into that folder you have created. Okay, just simply do that. Just drag everything inside there like so. Okay, so in this, that means that right now you are having only one folder having this word original, or whichever name you have given it, doesn't matter by the way. Just we are trying to put this one so that we clear this environment for ourselves, so that it doesn't confuse you in the future. So right now you have one folder with everything that was outside inside this folder. Are we together at that point? Okay, now create a new one. Create a new folder, and let me call this one test YT. So now you can create it anything. You can just say, maybe let me just call it PHP testing or testing PHP. Just create a new folder called any name you want. It doesn't matter which name you have. Okay, it doesn't matter which name you have. Now I want to first talk more about this folder. For every time we are going to create a new PHP website, okay, I repeat, every time we are going to create a new PHP website, we are going to be putting all our folders within this folder. Okay, this was very hard for me when I was starting. I could not understand why we are putting all these folders into htdocs. But htdocs is the one where all our server is pointing. Okay, our server is pointing to htdocs. I'm not going to go into server configuration right now, but most of the things are actually configured within a file here called php.ini. Now I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to go into details, the server settings are inside this php.ini file. But just to know is that what you should know about this is that everything we do, or all our websites, should be located into a folder called htdocs. Okay, just to know, for starters, all our project should be located into htdocs. Okay, so having said that out of the way, that means every folder you create here, if for instance I have my first PHP program, so I can just write here my first PHP program, or my first PHP website. So if this is my website, I can write a folder for representing the name of my website, and all the code will be written inside this folder. Okay, so at this point, I also assume that your VS Code is already installed, or your Sublime Text is already installed. So if you have installed VS Code, just right click on this which says my first website. Just create a folder and call it my first website. Right click on it and just open with code. As simple as that. So open with code. Okay, so we're waiting, and we're waiting for the VS Code, or we're waiting for our program or our folder to open in VS Code. Okay, we just want to open our program in VS Code. Okay, so now here, so in this folder, the only thing you're going to do is create one file, and that file, you're just going to call it index.php. Okay, so if you remember very well, if you are creating a website in HTML, we give it an extension .html, but in PHP, all our websites, the file extensions we give to those files, or the pages, we give them an extension of .php. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new file here, call it index.php, as simple as that. Okay, just do that. Just simply create index.php. Okay, so inside here, we are going to write our first program, or our first PHP program, and then we execute it in the browser, and then we'll stop there for that first episode. Okay, so to write our first program, really it is not hard. If you remember very well, we talked about PHP syntax, and then we said before you write any code for PHP, you must put it inside the opening tag and the closing tag. So the opening tag for PHP code is less than question mark, write PHP, then move down here, and then put the closing tag, which is question mark greater than. So inside here is where we put our code. So let's put our first code, which says echo hello world. So I'm just going to put echo hello world, as simple as that. So in this is not even to teach you PHP, but at least to be able to actually write your first program. Don't just try to understand what echo means or whatever. Just write that program and you'll be good to go. So the only question will be, how do we see our website in the browser? How do we watch our website in the browser? So at this point, if you have followed the steps I've explained before, if you have your services running, okay, if you have your services running for MySQL and Apache, then it should not be hard to run. So the only thing you're going to do, go back to your browser and type in localhost. Okay, type in localhost and press enter. At this point, it should bring you all the files. It should bring you all the files like this. It brings you the folders that are in the htdocs. It will bring you all the folders that are located in htdocs. In other words, this localhost is pointing in the htdocs folder. Okay, so this localhost points to the htdocs folder, and if you just simply now look for where your website is located, and our website right now is this folder called my first website. So if I click on it, just like that, you can see in the browser we have hello world. So congratulations, you have been able to write your first PHP website at this point. Congratulations, if you have reached point, this is the first foot in the right direction. So thank you so much for watching this episode. We are just going to continue in the next video. We are going to look at so many things, started to get into those interesting things, and we are going to first set up VS Code, look at different extensions that you need, so to be able to actually go ahead and do a lot of setup. Okay, thank you so much. See you in the next episode.